What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. As you can tell by the title, it's not gonna be a great one today. Hopefully you're having a good evening. Yeah, we are live with our final thoughts today after the disappointing result of last night's shenanigans of 5-0 defeat to Southampton at St Mary's. A lot of stuff to get into today, a lot of stuff. We actually have quite a bit to talk about. A lot of shit has gone down in the past 24 hours. So yeah, I've actually been up pretty much late night, literally watching every single interview today from yesterday, last night with Charlie Austin, Jamie Mackey. I've watched the Charlie Austin podcast thing today that he's posted on Twitter. So yeah, we got a lot to get into today. Very interesting stream today after yesterday's result. So let's get straight into it. Nick's in the chat. How do you players play at fault? JS say it's my fault, but come on. We'll talk about that now. Well, we'll talk about it in a second. Let's get into this basically match reaction, really. So yes, QPR went to St Mary's and got a wake-up call by getting defeated 5-0. Now, I'll say this, first things first. I expected the loss. I'll say that. I expected the loss. I think the majority of people did expect us to lose. It would have been best if we... Oh, wait, hang on. The camera looks like it's playing up. I don't know. Hang on, let me have a look. Sorry, hang on. No, it seems fine. It's just me. Just me. Yeah. So, first, what was I saying? Yeah, I was expecting a loss. Was I expecting an embarrassment? No. I thought with recent performance, obviously, you know, with Blackburn being a bit of a disappointment, but with our defending on how we've been a lot better than we was yesterday, completely. Now, it all kicked off, obviously, with Southampton pushing us for approximately, I would say, about 20 minutes into the game. And that's where their first goal came in. Now, as I said, they have really key players, key good signings, and very talented squad off and on the bench. The first goal obviously came from Azaz, who I highly rate, Finn Azaz, who they signed, I believe it was in the summer, from Middlesbrough, for a good standard amount of money. You know, QPR fans would know a lot about Finn Azaz. You know, he's a big player for Middlesbrough, and you know, he's put it on us a lot of times when we've played Middlesbrough. So yeah, very talented player, and he got the first goal with a tremendous strike, but really appalling defending to allow a player with that caliber to have that amount of space to have a shot out the area and pass Joe Walsh in the bottom corner. Do I blame Joe Walsh? No, not on that one. It's very difficult, them shots. The defense should have been doing a lot better. Jimmy, Dunn, Ronnie Edwards, and Mbenge should have been performing a lot better with that. I could say Hayden as well, and Madsen. But yeah, but that was the first 20 minutes of the game, and then QPR pretty much from 20 minutes were kind of pushing it a little bit, was trying to get into some sort of rhythm, but it just wasn't working. Southampton were really doing well. You know, we were shit on the day completely. That first half was really bad. You know, our touch game was really awful on the run. You know, passing game could have been a lot better. But apart from that, we wasn't there. The eyes were there, but the lights weren't on, as they would say. So yeah. But apart from that, Southampton in the first half at the end were pretty much all over us in the final, I would say, 10 minutes. So yeah, and that's when their second goal came in from Matsuki. Now, this goal here from Matsuki was a bit of a problem. It came from a corner, and I've always said that with set pieces, if you're not marking your players properly, it's not great. And to have a small player like Mansuki score a header like the way he did in a corner set piece, and to have him so open, no Jimmy Dunn watching anyone, just the captain just looking at the ball, staring at the ball coming in. A majority of players just not marking up properly. Jimmy Dunn's got to be doing a lot better and taking responsibility as captain for that mistake. He didn't do great yesterday whatsoever. Ronnie was a bit awful as well. And Amadou Mbengue didn't show exactly any defensive ability or quality like he usually does. Davis, same thing as well. Absolute appalling Davis was yesterday. I think it might have been the worst performance I've seen him play for QPR. In that case, we should have just played Escudina in that sense, in my opinion. So that made it 2-0 before half-time. But I want to say the defending on that was, yeah, really appalling. It's got to improve. It's got to be better. I know we can do better. We've seen it, but for some reason yesterday it just wasn't working. Was we missing Steve Cook? Probably. So yeah. Obviously, second half happened. I'm not gonna lie. Everyone in the chat, as well as me, were hoping for a substitution to come on, and there was a sub. Ryan Colley came off for Daniel Benny. Was it the correct sub? I don't think it was. I think Kone should have come off instead of Colley. I think that might have been the best call. Kone has been playing pretty much every game all season, and he looked really tired yesterday. And I'm not trying to defend him just because obviously with goals wise, but he did look really shattered yesterday. Majority of players did. With injury wise as well. I know we can't rest certain players. We can't rotate that much, but we got to do what we got to do. If we have to play a youngster instead of Kone, then it has to happen. Someone has to make a difference with fresh legs. But it was a bad substitution, I reckon, and that caused 2 more goals, really, to go in for Southampton with Masuki again, and the talented Leo Cienza scoring a cracking goal yet again, like he did in the home fixture when they beat us at home to make it 4-0. Obviously, we made some subs. There was a bit of a change in the subs. I think Varane was meant to come on in the 60th minute, but it was actually Keely Adamson for Harvey Vale, and then Escudina came on for Davis. And then Jonathan Varane came on for Richard Kone in the 67th minute. Obviously, Southampton did make some subs as well, with Cameron Archer and Ross Stewart both coming on. But then it was a silly mistake, by Escudina for not clearing it properly and gifting the ball to James Bree, who took a wonderful strike, but it did take a slight deflection off Ronnie Edwards to make it 5-0. And from there, they were very dominant. They were taking their chances. They were killing us completely, even when it was 5-0. I'm surprised that it didn't get any worse than 5. But yeah, absolutely embarrassing performance. Not great whatsoever. And yeah, that sums up pretty much the game. Now, in player ratings, Joe Walsh got a 4.5. Davis 5.6, Edwards 4.7, Mbengue 4.4, Dunn 5.3, Sato 6.4, Madsen 6.3, Hayden 6.2, Vale 5.9, Kone 5.9, and Colley 6.0. Listen, look, the rating says it all. It was a shambles completely from after 20 minutes, really. And it's got to improve. Man of the match was Matsuki with the 2 goals, obviously a 9.0 rating. So shout outs to him. He actually had a phenomenal game for Southampton. He was brilliant. So yeah, but let me talk about the real shit now. Obviously with what's been going on, because the last 24 hours have been crazy. So apparently, well, let's get to this first step. So Madsen did get injured in the game. I don't know how serious it is. They haven't announced it yet on how bad the injury is. It looked like hamstring. He did come off. Hopefully he's okay. Hopefully it's not serious. But if it's hamstrings, the likely chances are he's not going to be with us for at least a month or 2. So that's a key player. We've lost yet again another injury. The injuries are going to keep coming, I reckon, which is not great. But talking of that injury, apparently our guy at QPR got a lot of abuse yesterday after the game. I think is it Ben Williams? I think it is. He got a lot of abuse on social media, but I can't see anything directly at him on social media. But I would say this: if anyone has condemned, abused him, I would chill out, honestly, because at the end of the day, it's not needed. You know, I get you're frustrated with the loss, but to go out on one person, it's ridiculous. You know, I don't condemn it. You know, there's no need for it. I get you pissed off that QPR lost, but yeah, injuries, we all hate it. And yeah, do I think it needs to be improved? 100%, because it's been happening for seasons. And do I think that he has to blame? Not all of it, because you can't control injuries at the end of the day, but you can balance injuries. You know, if someone is an injury prone, or someone that tells you that they're feeling something or whatever, you relax with the training. You don't put them in high tempo training. Your regime is not going to work, you know? So whatever your regime is right now, Ben Williams, you need to kind of look into it and fix it. You know, I'm not discriminating you, whatever, you know, you're up there with the best. You know, you've told that you're the best. You know, you have the best qualifications. You know, you're at QPR for a reason, you know? But it's not working. Something's not working, and it needs to be looked into and fixed, and plan B needs to be in place, you know? We can't keep losing players. Now, this is the thing why I say you can't blame him for everything. Now, if we look at all the injury problems that we have, you know, Burrell, for example, that's not to do with Ben Williams. That's majority to do with the fact being that his hamstring got stamped on, you know? So that one we can't fault. So him. Varane's injury was literally his own fault for stretching and obviously getting into a challenge with someone knocking his knee. The Dembele one, listen, look, it's serious when someone has 2 ACL injuries in 2 seasons, you know? Now, with his first ACL injury, you know, with them, it's all about challenges. And the second one was a challenge as well. So I can't put it on him. But at the end of the day, when you have an ACL injury, you need to kind of understand he's gone. His knee's gone. It's going to be weak. And it needs to be in a coordination where you're going to put that player not in high intensity training. And he needs to be rested quite a lot for that. So yeah. This new guy striker, I'm not going into. Like I said, I've been told a couple of things, but I don't think it's injury problems or whatsoever. Who else did we have injured? Escudino, obviously we can't really blame Ben Williams. That was a very serious looked full, dangerous. But the Madsen, all the hamstring injuries to Chair, Madsen, and some other players as well, Poku. That needs to be looked into, because muscular injuries, Ben Williams, that is down to you. Not fully down to you, but you need to look into it for sure, you know? It comes down to where regimes, balances, food, you know, I know you say it's a muscular injury, it can't be prevented. If Sir Alex Ferguson can prevent a muscular injury to certain players and rest them the way he did, I'm sure it can be done today, you know? And it's something that needs to be looked at, honestly. You know, I don't fully blame anyone out the club for what's happened, but at the end of the day, plan B is always necessary. You know, if you're not going to buy players or get a player in on loan in January to give us any depth in that position, I know the aim was to use youngsters as well, but if we're not going to use Isaac and Kieran Morgan or anyone like that, what are we doing? You know, it's ridiculous. You know, do I think Kieran Morgan's been great this season? No, 100%. He wasn't really great when he came on yesterday. Do I think Isaac's great? I think he has potential, because he is a Conference European League player, you know, but he's not getting any game time. So clearly something's going on there. But majority of things, you know, Daniel Benny looks okay. Colley's not really performing here and there. And yeah, it just goes from there. So first things first, like I said, I don't condemn anything. I think let's kind of relax with blaming certain things, okay? Because at the end of the day, you know, with what was said yesterday with Charlie Austin and Jamie Mackey in the pundit in the show of Sky Sports, you know, I honestly believe Julian Stefan needs to be honest and not protect his players, and that's the honest truth. I like Julian. I love him. I think he is a great thing for QPR, and I think he will do well at QPR eventually. But when it comes down to performances like that, if you're putting the tactics out there for them to understand, and they're defending like that, they're not attacking like that or whatever, players are to blame for that, not you. You know, yeah, cool, you're giving them the instructions for what to do, but at the end of the day, don't come out and protect your players. You know, I got full much love for these players that are at the club, but at the end of the day, they need to own up to their mistakes and need to own up to what they're doing on the pitch. You know, defending has got to be better for sure, and attack has to be better. We have not had any creative chances in a while, so yeah. I would say this. I agree with Charlie Austin. I think Jamie Mackey wasn't really on it, but I agree with Charlie Austin what he said, where he needs to be more ruthless with his players and come out and not just come out and protect them. You know, because there were certain things that were said. Because it was a disgraceful game yesterday. It was, and Jimmy Dunn, the captain, needs to be on point and put his team on alert with that. You know, he's the main man, the main character. He's been chosen to be captain, and he's got to kick their asses into gear if they're doing something wrong. If Amadou, that goal that was scored, Amadou, he needs to get up. You can't just sit there and just wait for the referee to blow the whistle. Escudina, the clearance, you need to get onto him. Listen, look, I know you're young, but you got to do something better than that. You know? He's got to start talking to his players properly. I would like to see some ruthless aggression from Julian, from Jimmy Dunn. You know, it needs to be said. I'm sorry to say it, but it's the truth. You know, I like Julian a lot, but that performance was unacceptable. Yeah, we can blame Julian if you want to, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to, because, you know, at the end of the day, players' performance was appalling. You know, he can't. You know, all he could do is instruct the players what to do, and that's what I believe he's doing. But if they don't want to perform to that quality, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm still not happy with 4-4-2 formation, but you know, it comes down to player wise. They did fuck all yesterday. It's that simple. They were awful completely. Put your comments below what you think, if I'm right or wrong. Totally up to you. Your opinion matters at the end of the day. And it's great to see what QPR fans think, even if you're a Southampton fan. I know a lot of Southampton fans were getting on Ronnie on social media about that's why we got rid of him. Listen, look, Ronnie had a bad game. Cool. Everyone has a bad game. But at the end of the day, Ronnie Edwards is not shit. 100%. If you see him last season and the games that he's been, maybe shift him back to right back. Maybe shift him to right back for the rest of the season and put Mbenge in the middle, or Cook. Maybe that might do the trick. But Ronnie Edwards is not shit. The reason why you got rid of him is the fact being that is this. You're not playing him because you didn't want to play him. And we bought him and you took the money. It's that simple. You know, he's not shit. One bit he's not shit. You know, 100% Southampton fans, when he came in, were so looking forward to seeing what he was going to do at the club. So, yeah, that as well. So, yeah, I would say this. Have respect for some players, man, honestly. But, yeah, that's the subjects, really, that I wanted to get into. Obviously, Ben Williams, obviously. Hopefully he's okay. Hopefully he's all right. Shout outs to him, if obviously sticking by with QPR. Obviously, listen, look, I know in previous terms of his credentials, whatever, you know, in previous job at wherever it wasn't great, but you know, it needs to be fixed, simple as that. But Julian, yeah, just needs to make sure that he's a bit more ruthless on and being honest, really. I get, you know, he's trying to protect his players, but it needs to be brought out and said properly. So, yeah. But, like I said, we got no one to get on the bench to actually move on, in the sense of, like, even if we was going to get back into that game anyhow, there's no one on that bench that can be a game changer, you know. Poku is not going to be ready for weeks. Chair's not going to be ready until maybe Saturday, maybe even longer than that. So yeah, we're really struggling. Like I said, with Madsen injured now, what are we going to do? You know, we got a big game against Sheffield United on the weekend, and we're going to struggle big time, honestly, now. We really are. Do I think we're going to get relegated? Hell no. I don't think we're too much of a resistance to even think about relegation. You know, we're more in the points-wise of playoffs than we are, even though where we are in the league. You know, it's just because it's so damn close with 6th, 7th, or 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, you know? It's so damn close with between points because it's becoming a more competitive league now where even you'd think the shittest clubs are doing really well, you know? But sometimes it's majority of money that are improving these clubs. So yeah, I would personally say we're not going to get relegated. I can state that. I'll put money on it. I believe in Julian. Will he get sacked? Hell no. I think, you know, as long as he sticks in between 12th and 8th or 12th and 10th, you know, we got ourselves an achievement there, you know, compared to other seasons. You know, I miss the days of Mark Warburton where we was finishing in the top half, but at the end of the day, it's a whole different league now, and we're not a top club. When we have some good players, but we're still rebuilding, you know. So yeah, but like I said, we need to be more ruthless with our players. The coaching staff do, and yeah, answers. That is another thing as well. Answers need to be questions. Answers need to be questioned. We need answers. Fans need answers, not this and that of a Q&A. We need to know what's going on in the club for this to happen. We want answers. We don't want to be sat in the dark, quiet. Oh yeah, he's coming back in 2 months and all of that. Because listen, look, we're almost at the end of the season. What are we doing here? You know, what are we doing? Right, so let me have a look at some of the comments on the chat. You could give them the first goal, but done at fault for second, and Joe Walsh for the other 3. Nick says, I think with Joe Walsh, I still like to hope that he's a keeper in there, but I fear that he's making our mind up to sign someone. Nick says, agree to be that players were tired and no chance of with subs to change things. Danboy says, Ronnie Edwards has been thrown in the deep end. He needs time. I would say, listen, look, he doesn't even need time. Listen, he's shown that he's quality. One game cannot determine what a player is, you know, or a manager is, or, you know, look, Joe Walsh, the first goal, cool. I can't blame him for that. But the third goal, I think it was, and there was the other goal. There was only 2 goals that I think was to blame for him. You know, listen, look, we could question Joe Walsh all we want, but at the end of the day, every keeper has made mistakes in this season in our team. You look, Ben Hamer's made mistakes. You know, Joe Walsh mistakes. Paul Nardi's made mistakes. You know, and at the end of the day, what does that prove? Maybe something needs to change. But at the end of the day, we got to stick with what we got. And, you know, I don't know what's going with Paul Nardi at the moment, but we only have Ben Hamer and Joe Walsh. Do I like Joe Walsh? I always have liked Joe Walsh, but I feel like he has a lot to learn, you know? In my opinion, Ben Hamer is probably the best to get in the team right now, but it goes from there, you know. At the end of the day, Julian likes Walsh. It's that simple. You know, if Julian likes Walsh, Walsh is going to be goalie. I can't blame him for every goal that goes in, because it's not just him to blame. There's a reason why there's a defence in front of him to prevent that from happening. You know, Ronnie and Jimmy have to be on point with that yesterday, and Benge was appalling, and Davis was appalling. You know, Davis was a result to, and Escudina was a result to one of the goals each, you know? So, it comes to that. You know, I've seen Walsh pull off some incredible saves, and Walsh is not too small down, boy. Listen, look, it depends on what you want in a keeper, if you want a tall keeper or an average keeper or what, you know, but realistically, I've seen saves that Joe Walsh has done that are incredible still. And we all have. Look at West Ham. Look at previous games in January. You know, he's pulled off some marvellous saves. So let's not blame one player for goals, right? At the end of the day, it's down to 5 of them players. Jimmy, Edward. Oh, actually, do you know what? I'll name the players that are to blame in defence. Davis, Edwards, Dunn, and Benge, Cook. Joe Walsh if you want to at times, but at the end of the day, the defence is always to blame for not defending properly. Like I said, that first goal that went in, why are we giving Azaz that much space to score goal? We all know what Azaz is capable of. Even us fans are. If you're a football fan, a championship fan, if you've watched him for Middlesbrough, you know what he's capable of with that right foot. He's very talented. You know? Listen, if I went to us and said, like, for example, Adel Taarabt, you know? Every person would be like, alright, cool, you stick on Taarabt. You make sure you put him on his wrong foot. You make sure you don't foul him because he will get a pen or free kick. You make sure you aggressive him because he will lose patience and he will get sent off. And that's what you should be doing. You know? Taarabt was that guy and he did the best, honestly. And this is what I'm trying to say to you is this. We need to make sure we have our instructions correctly done. If you have Azaz, you stick tight on him. If you have Cienza, you stick tight on him. You know? The one surprise yesterday was Mansuki. You know? I've not seen Mansuki play like that. Completely. I know people are saying he's a talented player yesterday, but I don't really know much about Mansuki. You know? I know more about Fellows. I know he's a danger man. I know he's a cracking player. But he wasn't playing. And that's the problem. They had a bench as well that was at first team quality. We don't have a first team quality bench at the moment, you know. Do I think Jonathan Varane should have played? Yes, 100%. Agree. 100%. So yeah. But I would agree with, I would disagree with the Walsh is too small on that one. I don't usually disagree with everything. But I would disagree with that one, damn boy. I would. But I get where you're coming from. You know, in a keeper, height is always kind of the best attribute, you know. But I feel like for him, he's still good, you know. Is he in my top 3 though? Nah. I would say I'd rather have Murphy Cooper in my team. You know, I like Murphy Cooper. I've always liked him, you know. And we'll see what happens. And I'll probably eat my words out next season if that happens. So yeah. But yeah, going from there, yeah, like I said, a very disappointing result yesterday. We're all probably gutted. Another embarrassing performance. Julian did come out, like I said, protected his boys, which I understand, but it can't be protected anymore. You know, he did kind of say the same thing as when we did lose to Coventry 7-1, where he came out and did say that it won't happen again, the performance and all of that. Well, maybe sticking with 4-2-3-1 and playing some youngsters that are adequate to play would be reasonable as well. You know, I didn't expect to win this game, like I said, but I didn't expect to get thrashed 5-0 at St Mary's as well. So yeah, a lot of changes need to be done. Something needs to be fixed this week. He needs to go in there and talk to the boys. Jimmy Dunn needs to have a word in confidential, what's happened, is anyone unhappy and stuff like that, which I hope not. I hope everyone is tickety-boo at the club. I hope there's no serious issues like what was confidential with Marty Fuentes. Obviously certain things were going on there, and I'm hoping it's not the same here. I know players are probably getting annoyed if they're not getting game time, but it's football. You got to deal with it. You're getting paid more than the majority of a person that earns on a 9-to-5 job. You're sitting on your ass. Be happy, man. I know it's frustrating if you want to play football, but it only means one thing. Work harder. It's that simple. So, yeah. But the only poor rating from Southampton was Larian with a 6.3 anyway. But every other player was incredible for Southampton, and I'll say that, you know. Like I said, we've got Sheffield United on Saturday. Let's see what happens. We will have our match preview either tomorrow or Friday for the Sheffield United game. We're at home, so fingers crossed it's a good turnout. Fingers crossed we make some noise for the boys. Hopefully the ground at the stadium is pretty decent and not a big blur. But yeah, apart from that, there's not much else to talk about. You know, we killed the stream yesterday yet again. Another crazy stream, which was amazing. We've hit 500, well, just over 500 subscribers now. So much love to you guys who tuned in and subscribed, and everyone that chats away, and anyone that actually watches my content. Much appreciated, much love. But if you want, what I'll say is this: put your comments below what you think of the game, what needs to be changed before our match preview, in the sense of like player wise, what would you do? Leave your comments below, and we'll go from there. Apart from that, it's gonna be alright. It's gonna be alright, Dan Boy says. Yeah, apart from that, we're gonna leave it there for tonight. I think we've covered everything, personally. I think we have. I could go on a full rant for an hour, but that'll be just repeating myself constantly. You know, we know where we are. We're sitting, where are we sitting now? Table wise, we are sitting 13th. We're back to -6 goal difference, which I'm not happy about. 47 points. We're literally a bit more points away from playoffs now. So I would say this: let's not worry about playoffs. Let's not think about playoffs. Let's think about top 10, getting the points on the board, and go from there. But apart from that, thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Dan, for all the comments that you've put in the chat, and anyone else that has tuned in. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to, and we will catch you on either tomorrow or Friday with the match preview to Sheffield United. Apart from that, have a lovely evening, and we'll catch you soon. Peace, love, positivity as always. Peace out.